As we navigate the ring of fire solar eclipse at the 0 point of Aquarius, we are invited to dismantle our stagnant, outdated structures and step boldly into a high-frequency era of radical authenticity. Hey there, Truth Seeker. Welcome to the Star Kittens community where we discuss 13-sign astrology. Are you in alignment with your divine design? Do you want to master the metaphysical reality? Open the doors of perception. Each planetary body is an archetype, a template, if you will, that helps us interpret human behavior in the world around us. The more awake and aware we are, the more synchronicity will show up in your life. Our focus today is the Ring of Fire solar eclipse in Aquarius. To help us reach more souls with this important message, please like, share and subscribe. There's a lot going on, so let's jump in. Kia ora, David.
Kia ora.
A beautiful summer's day here and a very exciting period coming our way. Today we are talking about the February new moon, which here in New Zealand happens on the 18th of February at 1:01 in the morning. A nice early time for us.
101.
Yes. Just unfortunate because in other parts of the world, people will be able to see a beautiful eclipse. So that's what we will be talking about today. But I just want to start with the position of this new moon, which when we use the actual positions of the planetary bodies, I feel like I'm repeating myself every time, but we get bombarded with friends and social media that, it's this and this, and you're like, but just use your eyeballs and check where these planets actually are. So for us, it is at 0 degree Aquarius in 59 minutes, so pretty much 1 degree Aquarius that the sun and moon are conjunct. What information would you like to share with us about that?
Well, that's what we've signed up for, is to talk about the true position of the planets, and unfortunately we just have to keep banging our heads against a brick wall at times. That's what it feels like. But at the same time, we'll have a discussion today that some people will really resonate with and others will not, because they're following the 12-sign system. But look, it is what it is, and we're in the public square, and you roll the dice and let the chips fall where they may. 0 to 1 degrees, anytime anything happens at 0 to 1 degrees in a planetary body moves into that sensitive part of a constellation, it is a signal to, it's the cosmos signaling that there's a new beginning, and it's also signaling that the end of the previous cycle, which in this case was the cycle of the sun through Capricorn, is coming to an end. But because it sits 0 to 1 and where this lunar eclipse is occurring at 59 minutes, which is almost a degree into Aquarius, when we think about the 12-sign system, and they'll be talking about this at 27 degrees Aquarius, there's some resonances that we will talk about shortly, going back to the last time there was not that there was an eclipse at this position in Aquarius, but the last time that we had a full annular solar eclipse based on the Saros cycles was in 2008. And the position of that is concluding now at this Saros cycle 18-year lunar eclipse, a full annular solar eclipse. So there's an 18-year cycle that started back in February 2008 that's concluding in February 2026. So the fact that we have such a long cycle coming to an end, that in and of itself is important to dwell upon. And of course, in the 12 sign system, they will be missing that particular part of the discussion. But it's all layered, and it's all important to take into account that there is a period coming to an end that began in February 2008, and we're reflecting before this conversation in our own experiences of that, and we would encourage everybody to go back to February 2008 when there was an annular solar eclipse. It was actually in Capricorn at that time, but it was the same ring of fire eclipse, and just take some time to reflect on exactly what it was that you were doing at that particular period of time in history, in your personal history. On the collective, 2008, most people will know, was also the year of the great financial crisis that has led to effects that have been rippling through the reality of human consciousness ever since that point, and still are today. So that just gives some idea as to how intense this ring of fire lunar eclipse, a full solar annular eclipse, truly is, given that the last time this occurred was in 2008. So on top of that 18-year cycle, the Saros cycle ending and a new one beginning, what that means is when we look forward is that this 2026 Saros cycle will end in 18 years' time. Intensifying and adding to the intensity of this is the fact that it's at 1 degree effectively in Aquarius. So what that signals is a fresh start. Unquestionably and unequivocally, this is a fresh start for humanity. Bearing in mind, though, that the effects or the ripple effects of this eclipse will last for a long time. So it doesn't mean that we're going to wake up on the 17th, 18th of February 2026 and think, oh my goodness, the world's turned the corner. No, that won't be what's happened. But when we look back, as we can today, back to 2008, with the benefit of hindsight, we'll be able to see clearly that this eclipse signified a very significant shift, both individually, but more importantly collectively, given that it's at 0 to 1 degrees or 59 minutes Aquarius. So it's a fresh start for humanity on the collective level. Therefore, it's a supercharged new moon. What it will do, both individually and collectively, is trigger rapid or fated or disruptive shifts in our reality. It's like a cosmic door is open, or an initiating point that is opening to both an 18-year cycle, also a fresh cycle of Aquarius, and an 18-month cycle, just to add in another cycle, which is to do with the lunar nodes. We won't explain that. If you want to understand the 18-month cycle of the lunar nodes and how this also feeds into this lunar eclipse, we'd encourage you to look that up using one of the generators, or just simply go to Google and search it and you'll be amazed. So we've got an 18-year cycle and we've got an 18-month cycle kicking off. This cosmic door has opened, this initiation point, and at 1 degree Aquarius. We will be, collectively as a species and individually, pushed out of our comfort zone. When I was reflecting on what happened for me in 2008, that's absolutely what happened. I got made redundant and a whole bunch of things unfolded from there that initially looked kind of grim, but came out of nowhere, but ended up being an amazing period in my life that began after that redundancy. So we're talking about the cosmic intelligence, and the universal intelligence is going to ask us and to present to us an opportunity to take some new radical action, some shift our identity, the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world and the way others see us too. So I mentioned before that this is called a ring of fire eclipse. If you could see it, you would understand, but there'll be plenty of photos on the internet about what a ring of fire eclipse looks like. And unlike most eclipses, which kind of require us to reflect and go inward and to introspect and be almost emotional, this is about showing us in our lives where we need to do better, where we need to do some trimming and pruning of elements or aspects of our reality that need to go. They're not going to be able to withstand this new Aquarian energy, this fire energy and high frequency energy that's beginning. So I would say that this is a period of what I would call revelation and realization. And because of the square of the lunar eclipse to Uranus, who is the ruler or overseer of Aquarius, in Taurus, this will be highly physical, which means that the manifestation of these radical changes that will come out of our environment will potentially come out of nowhere. So as opposed to mental or emotional or psychic breakthroughs, this will be physical. Something or a series of events will take place individually and collectively in the physical world. And we know that because this lunar eclipse is in a square to Uranus, the disruptor, who is in Taurus. And whilst we won't cover it too much today, Uranus is also conjunct Sedna in Taurus, and Sedna represents the world's water, the seas, the Arctic Circle, the highly advanced species of the waters such as dolphins and whales and so on and so forth. So we have absolutely a focus on there will be disruption, there will be events take place in the earth, in our environment, or in the waters around us, the seas particularly. So this ring of fire effect is very intense. And because it will happen in our physical world and we are attached, many of us, to our physical reality, it will be emotional. So expect breakdowns and breakthroughs. A warning, be careful not to make impulsive decisions. Whatever happens, take some time to digest. If you are getting some disruptive situations that are likely to transform your personal situation or scenarios, or things are happening in the collective, just take some time to breathe, to absorb, to digest. Remember that this is an 18-month to 18-year process that's beginning to unfold. Finally, I would say that expect in the collective the beginning of a structural overhaul. And when I talk about the structures, when we go back to the 18 years ago, the last time there was a full solar annular eclipse in Capricorn, if Capricorn represents the structures that humanity has put in place that represent our institutions, typically our political institutions, our economic institutions, our social structures, our technological structures, our legal structures, all of that, which manifest often in big banks, big businesses, big oil, big pharma, all of that, big bureaucracies, big governments, big tech, all of those structures that began to be put in place 18 years ago in 2008, some of them are going to start to unwind and unravel beginning at this lunar eclipse. But I stress again that this isn't going to happen overnight. We're talking about a process that will take at the least 18 months and at the most 18 years.
Fascinating how these cycles show up everywhere. I mean, we can see it in nature, the seasons, the way the planetary body move in their own cycles. And then, of course, it makes sense that these eclipses have their own duration of cycles as well. I clearly remember that annular solar eclipse in 2008. I was studying at university, and I remember looking through I don't know, something with a very small hole where there was some cardboard so that we wouldn't blind ourselves, and seeing that ring of fire literally was, it's etched into my memory. So it's very cool to reflect back on that time. My much younger self, all the things I didn't know or didn't want to know, and here we are today. So, of course, this new moon also is very important in the Chinese way of looking at the world, astrology as such. We've all heard of, we are leaving behind the year of the snake and we are stepping into the year of the fire horse, which is quite cool because your Chinese zodiac is a fire horse. So have you got any insights about what's coming in that sense?
Yeah, so fire horses, 1966, I'm revealing my age. Beginning, interestingly, with the Chinese Lunar New Year, which is around the same time as this lunar eclipse. I just find it fascinating that is happening at this precise moment. And, you know, we've got Western astrology, and then we've got these two systems, or in fact various systems. We've got the Vedic sidereal system, we've got the Western Ptolemaic 12 sign system, we've got the 13 sign system, and then we've got this Chinese zodiac. Irrespective, they're all pointing to a pretty significant period beginning certainly in 2026, and maybe that'll go on for even longer. I don't profess to be an expert in the Chinese astrological, so I'm just going to touch on something that I found online that I thought was quite interesting to talk about. The Chinese lunar year of the fire horse, which of course goes from February 17, the time of this lunar eclipse, through to February 5, 2027, is considered to be one of the most powerful and rare combinations in the 60-year Chinese zodiac cycle. So it's known to them as a double fire year because the horse's native element is also fire. So this signifies a period of extreme momentum, radical change, and unyielding passion. And in the Chinese astrological system, this year of the fire horse or double fire, so we've got a ring of fire. In the Western astrology, we've got the double fire. In the Chinese, we've also got, and I didn't touch on it before, that in the 13 sign, that this total annual solar eclipse is actually also conjunct to Mars, adding another element of fire. But the Chinese talk about this as accelerated transformation, which very much aligns with Aquarian energy. And they're saying that this is a year, this next 12 months anyway, is a year which acts as, quote, a great magnifier, unquote, accelerating existing projects and abruptly dismantling stagnant systems. I thought that was quite interesting, given that, as I said before, 2008 was the last time we had this solar annular eclipse, and that there were a lot of systems that were built around the time of that global financial crisis, including regulatory systems, big banking systems, financial systems, which impact all of us through the collective, which is an Aquarian energy, and perhaps some of those are going to be dismantled. Some of those, there's been a massive impinging on some of our rights from growth of governments and so on. And that's all this Aquarian Saturnian clash that's coming out here. But it's interesting that the Chinese are nodding towards this accelerated transformation, certainly in the next 12 months of their lunar year, as I repeat, from February 17 through to February 5, 2027, known as a double fire year. They also talk about freedom and independence, and the horse's natural love for freedom is amplified by fire. And they talk about this for the collective as a time to break away from restrictions and to pursue personal truth. And finally, they talk about an unstoppable energy. This double fire year of the fire horse in the Chinese astrological, and we normally wouldn't talk about it, but it's just there's a nice resonance and convergence between the Western astrological and the Chinese on this particular occasion. there's an unstoppable energy. So the year ahead favours those who are willing to take bold, decisive action, and those that are, rather than waiting back and sitting around waiting for the perfect conditions. The fact that there's so much fire says that that is an energy of taking action and stepping forward boldly, maybe even into something that you're not quite sure how it will pan out, but you believe that it's totally in alignment with your purpose and your reason for being here on this planet. And there will be lots and lots of opportunities. They'll come quickly. And we talked before, there's the last part of this, we'll talk about the solar eclipse in Aquarius specifically, but I think that that's the Chinese, the resonance between the Chinese and the 13th sign is very close. I think there's certainly some resonances also with the 12th sign, but bear in mind that they're talking about 27 degrees-ish Aquarius, which is almost at the end of Aquarius, whereas we're talking about the beginning of Aquarius. So if you're looking at timelines overlaying each other, it's almost like the 13 signers are starting something pretty amazing, and the 12 signers are talking about something coming to an end and moving into that Pisces period, whereas we're talking about, we haven't even touched at all about what it means to be in Aquarius, both on a collective level and an individual level, and perhaps we'll touch on that last as we wrap this up.
Yeah, and it's just coming from that Capricorn energy, like using the 13 sign, it being on the cusp. We're taking a lot of that Capricorn, we've built something amazing, and for me it's like it's now let's enjoy it with the collective. Whereas for me, having it at the end of Aquarius, using the 12 sign and stepping into this Piscean age almost of dissolution before it can emerge again. So very different energies between the 12 and the 13 sign system. So what I always love is how we are able to kind of make people think of what this energy will bring them. And so to do that for this February new moon, start of the fire horse year, where in your chart is the 0 to 1 degree Aquarius? For me, it sits in my 3rd house. So what can you tell about that? What is this Aquarian energy on a personal and then maybe on a collective level as well?
Yeah, it's so, I mean, everything we've talked about so far is the collective level. But to understand this truly, obviously we're all part of the collective and the collective human species. So to that extent, we're all affected by this lunar eclipse, ring of fire eclipse, and the fire horse energy of the Chinese zodiac as well. But for an individual, you need to understand in the 13th sign exactly where 1 degree Aquarius is. And as you said, for you it's in the house of the 3rd house. For me it's in my 9th house. But for everybody it's going to be in one of the houses. And so the interpretation, for some listening, they love the big picture stuff and they want to know, yep, I can see, yep, I almost take a spectator role and say, yes, I can see the breakdown of some of these Saturnian systems, and absolutely we can see this acceleration of some pretty radical shifts on the collective level in our institutions, our great institutions of power, Saturnian power or Capricornian power, and they can see that. And you know, we are beginning a period of a great zeitgeist, if you like, in the collective. But for others they'll be like, but that's great, how does it affect me? And so the answer to that is to look at your chart, your 13 sign chart, and say, well, where is 0 degrees Aquarius? And that house that it's activating, and I use the word activating because it's at the very first degree, is that house is going to be activated. And you don't necessarily have to have any planets in there or planetary bodies in there, because irrespective, that house will be activated. And because this is such disruptive energy, whatever house it is, expect there to be some sudden changes taking place. Even if life is going swimmingly, it may be like I found in 2008 that, you know, my career at that time was going very well, and I never ever foresaw. In fact, as I was sharing with you, I was in the process of moving cities, moving from Wellington at that point to Melbourne, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, in what I thought was a really secure part of my life, there was this, there's a restructure, it's been announced, and there's nothing you can do about it, and here's a check and see you later. Literally within a 2-week period, where prior to that announcement, which came from the earthly sphere, and this is what I'm talking about, is that these things are, these events, these triggers, these catalysts, these sudden awakenings or breakdowns or breakthroughs that happen for us individually will come from our physical environment. Sometimes, if we're talking about eclipses, they may come through an emotional meltdown or an emotional experience, or they may come through some kind of psychic or spiritual awakening. We're not talking about this, we're talking about the mundane. So each of these houses, where is it for you? And that will help you to understand how you may be affected by this lunar eclipse and what to look out for and how to prepare for it. On a bigger picture level, going back to that, the Aquarian energy, as most people know, and we think about the age of Aquarius, and what, if you say to somebody, even if they don't follow astrology, what does the age of Aquarius mean to you? They will probably come up with, oh, isn't that about big changes on the planet and so on and so forth? And actually, when you go back and do a little bit of a check of history of Aquarian, the age of Aquarius in that song, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It goes back to that mid-60s, and it's very interesting that, again, here we have the 60s resonance. The last time fire horses were on the planet was right in the middle of this age of Aquarius, so it feels like if you were born in 1966, you may in fact be a reincarnation of somebody born in 1966, but born in 66 in the middle of the age of Aquarius, and then the time is now perhaps for you to step forward and bring your futuristic mind, your philosophical mind to the table. Because what people are looking for in this energy of Aquarius is radical ideas. We can see clearly that even if it's a local, you and I were touching on this the other day about school boards, how this is a classic community structure where parents ought to be able to influence the school boards, but often what happens with the school boards is that they're full of people who are coming out of the commercial world, who may be a CEO, they may be a highly credentialed worker in the Capricorn world, and they come into the Aquarian world and they actually aren't that effective. So the idea of radical ideas coming into these small community groups and collectives is a key piece to the message here of this eclipse. Radical authenticity is another piece of it, is that coming into alignment with your divine design, understanding what your passion and purpose is and how you can contribute to the collective is also part of this. But we are dealing with outdated social structures. We are dealing with a need to reform the way that we individually and collectively see the world. And therefore, it is up to all of us to begin to think about how we can deal with and confront outdated and outworn patterns of behavior and thinking in the collectives and in the communities of which we're all a part that just aren't working anymore, that have become dysfunctional. But we don't have the time to go through each of the houses. Suffice to say that the shifts that could occur in the first house or the second house or the third house, right through to the 12th house, depending on where your Aquarian house is, will be very individual. And it is up to you, the listener, to take some time to firstly understand the true position of the planets in order to understand truly where it is that you will be activated and where you could potentially have either a massive breakdown or a huge breakthrough. And to conclude this, we were touching before about the position of Taurus here, with Aquarius and Taurus and the square to the eclipse. And what came to me was, because Taurus is foundations, is that those who have been working diligently on their foundations, in other words, their resources, their skill sets, their financial resources, or any other type of resources tied to the physical world, those who have been working on that perhaps in the last 3 or 4 years, been working on developing something, building something. Taurus is very much a builder. What could be activated at this time is that project, that passion project, that personal quest that you've been on could go to another level, activated by the Uranian energy in a square to this ring of fire new moon. So if you've been working diligently, which is what Taurian energy is, and as we shared with one another, working at a project, and perhaps you haven't had the financial rewards or the recognition, you are ready. You are one of the people, if you're in that situation, what that Taurian energy is, as I interpret it, is that there are a whole bunch of people that are almost lined up at the start line, and they are about to get a massive cosmic push and a quantum leap in their reality. And it'll be a physical leap because we're talking about a physical expression and a manifestation of this energy. You won't get this emotional or mental breakthrough or a spiritual breakthrough, but you'll get a physical breakthrough, which could mean, in terms of anything from a huge opportunity in the Aquarian. And when we're talking about Aquarius, we're talking often about digital creators, people that have been building maybe a profile, have been building something in order to contribute to the collective in Aquarius. Those are the people who quite likely are in a position, unbeknownst to them, to have a radical push forward. This is an energy, this lunar eclipse is an energy, because there's so much fire, that something is going to shift. And the question becomes very simply, are you ready for that? Are you ready to let go? Because if you try to hold on to whatever it is that needs to go out of your life, you're really pushing against almost the inevitable. And it's going to be hard because of that Taurus energy, because the Taurus, the other side of the shadow is, Taurus is incredibly stubborn. So there'll be people who have breakdowns in that material physical world as well, and it will feel like the end of the world for them. But know this, the cosmos, source, your guides, your angels have your back. But you may need to go through something quite dramatic in order to wake up to a new reality. But this new reality is going to play out over an 18-month period to 18-year period. And the subtle, the first marker is the 6 months from now, when there's an eclipse in the opposite position of Aquarius down in Leo. That will be your first kind of signpost. So you've got 6 months, 18 months, and 18 years. And I'm excited. Don't know about you. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, it is exciting. I do feel like I've been held back by some strings, and I'll put it down to procrastination and laziness and too busy, but at the same time I feel almost like there've been invisible hands on my shoulders just holding me back. And whether it is the change from that snake year to the horse year, or whether it is because this this eclipse new moon is hitting in my third house of communication, very close to my Pallas Athena, that I'm ready for that jump off almost. So just to clarify, David, in your absolute excitement of sharing this story today, you've been you live astrology so much, and I have gotten used to it. You know, you talk about Mercury when you actually mean Gemini and vice versa. But today you've been saying lunar eclipse, which is not until the next one. So just to clarify for the audience, it is the annular solar eclipse that is happening on the 18th of February. And I would love to hear from you, listeners, what you feel. Are you as excited as we are? Are you desperate to know where this hits in your 13 sign chart? David, I know that you have been working away very hard for the last few years, very Taurian energy, just one foot after the next. And I know that your hard work will come to fruition, and I'm very excited to see where that is all going to go. Have you got any parting messages for the people listening?
Well, I guess, it's just to share about what we were touching on about for us where this eclipse happens in Aquarius. For you, that third house, so we're expecting some pretty big changes in that house of communication and broadcasting. And for me, it happens in my 9th house, which is the house of higher mind and philosophy. And when we think about, you've got a Taurus North Node, I have a Taurus rising, so we're both, I can understand what it is to work diligently at something. And as I shared with you before, my own experience of the last time that there was an eclipse of 2008, I had no idea that redundancy, which was in the physical world, was going to lead to such an exciting and amazing period that came after that. And I know at the time that it came as a shock because I was just beginning to Taurus energy, a la Taurus energy. I was really digging in and building my resources. And intuitively, my first reaction was, I know that, as it always has been, that Source has my back. And that's kind of the message that I need to get through, is that there is going to be, in my own experience and talking to other people as well about what happens at these annular solar eclipses, is that they are just, it's like a bucking bronco. If you get on that horse, you're going to have to ride that thing, and it is going to get wild. There are so many podcasts and people talking about this, just the lunar fire eclipse energy. But remember that we've got a solar eclipse conjunct to Mars, we've got the Chinese, and we've got a ring of fire, and they're entering the year of the fire horse. So whatever happens, it comes back down to mindset ultimately, I think, is the key. And developing a mindset of expectation and total trust in your guides and in Source and in your higher self, that in the middle of something being swept away from you in the physical world, whilst it might feel like the end of everything, it's only actually the beginning. And that is confirmed by the fact that this is at 1 degree Aquarius, which means that absolutely, as I touched on before, there's a cycle that began in 2008 that's coming to an end. And there's also a Capricornian energy that's wrapping up and manifesting as something new. And the bridge between Capricorn and Aquarius is probably the last place to leave this, I think, as a nice sort of afterthought. Capricorn is where, as we've touched on, we build in the material world. This is the pinnacle of what we build. So if we start, the soul's journey is we start in Taurus and we build something with our raw materials. And then in Virgo energy, we refine that, and in Capricorn, that's where we perfect. So the energy of Taurus and Capricorn, we can't forget about the Virgo, but this is a process of building that's coming to an end. So 18 years ago, you, the listener, began to build something. And this is going to be tested by the fires of change. And some of that isn't going to stand up to scrutiny. Some of it is not going to be able to withstand the new Aquarian free-thinking, innovative age Some of it is going to be perfectly suited to the new zeitgeist, the new paradigm that's coming. But for some of you, it's going to be shocking what happens. But as I said before, this is all part of the plan, and it's all about your mindset. And as one door opens, another closes. And what's an expression? In every cloud there's a silver lining. I mean, there's so many of these expressions, right? So they seem like empty platitudes sometimes, but if there's going to be a time to pull out some of those, it's going to be now.
Thank you, and thank you, listeners, for listening. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Audible, Podbeam. Look up our Linktree links so you can get in touch, get your own chat or a reading. We love doing those, so we had such beautiful feedback the other day. So let's embrace our true divine design for this lifetime. Nā mihi.
Namaste.
Until next time.